Hi, my name is Lyric Rumbles, and today we are going to be continuing the conspiracy theory Iceberg by Wendigoon. We are on part 7. Now, as you know, we're doing the entire 7th layer. It's 3 parts. I think this is the longest one yet. It's definitely the longest one yet, because episode 1 of the 3-part in part 7 is 38 minutes long. So yeah, this is probably going to be a well over 1 hour long video. So this is a video, you're just going to sit back, have a snack, I guess. Maybe watching the background while you're playing a video game or eating some chicken nuggets or something. I don't know. But yeah, make sure to subscribe. Because if you're about to watch an hour long video of me reacting to Wendigoon, and you're not even subscribed yet, what are you doing? Also, if you want me to continue the series, make sure to like the video to make sure you like the series, and subscribe to get more notifications for this series, because I'm trying to hit 700 subscribers, currently at 644 as recording this. So yeah, let's not waste any time. Let's go into Wendigoon Conspiracy Theory Iceberg Part 7.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the first part of Tier 7 of the Conspiracy Theory Iceberg. Guys, I have no idea what's going on. I was at 10k subs whenever I made the childhood trauma video, which was like 2 or 3 videos ago. And I'm at like 65,000 now. I'm so thankful. I'm so blessed. I have no idea what I did.
This is wholesome.
Did wrong, I guess, to deserve it, because like the disturbing movie Iceberg is almost to 1 million views, which I can't even process that. And then my subscribers are shooting up, and then like YouTubers I've watched forever are like DMing me and saying good job, and it's
hey, my man.
It's a lot. I appreciate it so much, and I sincerely do mean it to everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you to my subscribers, my patrons, everyone. I really am humbled, and it's all thanks to you all. I couldn't do it without you. So sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for watching.
Hey,
Before we get
no problem,
this,
man. No problem.
There's one thing I need to clear up.
Thank you for making.
In the disturbing movie Iceberg near the end, I said that things near the bottom were illegal and should not be looked up.
This
I
I'm
should
talking
have
about
clarified on it.
This I'm talking about the disturbing movie Iceberg. Well, let's get past that.
Before we get started, thank you for watching. Tier 7 is described as the interdimensional monk, and the description reads, the interdimensional monk sees the whole picture and is able to discern reality from unreality. Because of their nature, the mixture of entries around this tier is a really varied one and very difficult to comprehend. Aztec theogony refers to the theological legend of the Aztec people. This is going to come up a few times.
Ripping out that means organs?
But I'm about to condense hundreds of years of religion and culture into like 1 or 2 minutes. So if I skip over stuff or am not describing it all the way, it's really hard to, so bear with me. This can differ heavily from province to province, especially because in Aztec culture things weren't recorded or passed around that much. But the basics of their theological history go like this. A primary god and goddess lived in heaven, to which the goddess cast down a knife that cut open the earth. When the knife was cast down, 1,600 fallen gods came to earth and essentially became evil spirits. During this time, they called down a great flood, which wiped out the life that was on earth before them. And after these fallen gods were not allowed back into heaven, someone named Axolotl went to Hades to try to retrieve a bone that could be brought out of Hades and used to grant the fallen god's power. But while retrieving the bone, he dropped it. The bone shattered into an inconceivable amount of pieces, and those pieces later grew into what is now humans. These humans began to serve different fallen gods, which is the reason that the cultures and tribes were so diverse and spread out, because each one was a different group of people who followed a different fallen god. At this time, the whole world was covered in darkness. So to stop it, one of the gods built a bonfire, said he needed a sacrifice to walk into the fire, to which one of the humans did, and that human was transformed into the sun. Again, that was a super short, condensed version of thousands of years of theology, so nah. So how does this relate to all of our conspiracy theories? Well, if you'll notice some of the points in it, there's a lot of through lines that connect this to the
other
religions.
Yep.
Think about it this way. Aztec is about as far as you can get geographically and culturally from the ancient Hebrews or Babylonians or Sumerians or something like that. Yet we still see the themes of fallen gods or angels coming from the heavens, a great flood wiping out the population on earth, one of these fallen gods or angels going to hell, humanity following these different lesser gods, and then finally one of these followers of the gods being sacrificed for the greater good, and then ascending to the heavens. This is actually a common thread seen in a lot of old religions and traditions, and it's interesting to draw the parallels between them to try to figure out where the roots of not only humanity, but maybe belief in existence itself come from.
That's really interesting. I like that. The connections.
As a cautionary tale. See, the parrot is a sort of hazing thing when it comes to research communities and researchers. The idea being that anytime a new journalist or researcher or scientist or whatever gets into a field that they have to do case studies, there will be a story comes up that's called the parrot story. Think about it. How many times have you seen a story where it's like a parrot stopped home invaders from breaking into a house because it started making noises that sounded like the police? Or a man caught his wife cheating because the parrot started mimicking the guy that she was cheating with, and so on and so forth. These are all either very mundane stories or stories that just didn't happen and are kind of made to fill up dead space. However, they're also viewed as a sort of rite of passage for new people getting into a research field. Something we're going to see a lot with this iceberg moving forward, especially because a lot of the concepts we're getting to are a lot. There will be more and more things similar to this parrot story. I'll point them out as we get along when I know something is disinfo, but this is a specific example of what disinfo might be. Real dowsing and rhabdomancy is in reference to dowsing, which I mentioned all the way in, I think, tier 2. If you'll remember, dowsing is the trick in which you can hold metal bars or crossed wires and use that to figure out where water wells or spiritual areas are around the earth. Rhabdomancy is very similar. In the most simple version, people in ye olden days would take a stick, place it upright, let it fall, and whichever direction it fell, that would be the one they were to travel in. This was also used to make decisions. In other words, you could say fall right for yes, left for no. And it's even cited in things like the Bible as Nebuchadnezzar using rhabdomancy as a way to make his decisions. What's interesting is, especially in biblical text and text at the same time, there's mention of rhabdomancy and things similar to dowsing as a form of divination.
He comes for things such as multiple times.
Historically, people
he's intentionally trying not to say it now.
Either as a means of determining where to put in a water vein or traveling in whatever direction, have used witchcraft or black magic familiar spirits as a means of utilizing this technique. Not only that, but there's a case to be made in historical records for people who did dowsing professionally or for others always becoming ill and with some sickness, implying that maybe something they were working with in order to do the dowsing proved to be harmful, or if this really is a black magic, maybe they're just suffering the long-term effects of it. Faust nonfiction is in reference to the very famous play Faust. The original inspiration for the story Faust came from a man named Johann Faust. He was an alchemist and a necromancer, which, if you've been watching the Iceberg to this point, you know are risky business. And according to the belief of many at the time, he himself made a deal with the devil in order to obtain the abilities of alchemy and necromancy. This inspired the Marlowe play, known as The Tragical History of the Life and Death of Dr. Faustus. Here's what's interesting. At the exact same time in Poland, a story known as The Legend of Pan Twardowski was picking up a lot of steam because there was legends in that region of people making deals with the devils and then being taken to hell for it. Now, the story didn't get as famous as it is today until a man named Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, made the poem Faust that was later adapted into the Great Play. However, all of these corresponding legends came together and was about the same story of a man who met the devil at a crossroads and gave his soul to the devil.
When a lot of things happen at the same time that are very similar, when they don't cross paths with each other, it's really creepy.
So he could take instant gratification.
That's something I've learned from this Iceberg.
This story inspired works like Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. However, when you look into some of the more supernatural tales of it, like Tommy Johnson and Robert Johnson, American blues singers who were supposedly part of a crossroad deal in which they sold their soul to the devil in order to play music, and records
a lot of singers have been accused of that.
It seems that the legend of Faust didn't just come from a place of fiction, but experiences that were shared by great communities and later became stories. So
that was really interesting.
Is Faust based on a true story?
All
right, so hyper sigil.
We got an ad. Make sure to subscribe and like so that we can afford to get the ads off if they annoy you.
Sigils is a really crazy concept. Sigils are traditionally used in magic and witchcraft in order to summon or bind certain spirits. I.e., you could put one up to bring in a demon or angel or entity, or a different kind to make them do your bidding. A hyper sigil, or super sigil as they're sometimes called, are used to completely transform one's own life by slightly recreating it with alterations. What's that mean? Well, the example that's most often used is, say you made a book series about someone that you knew, and the entire book series was so close to that person's livelihood that you could tie the two of them in as the same person. However, when you get to the 5th issue of the book, you begin writing minor alterations to that person's character, saying they're more bossy or they're more snobby or whatever personality change you want.
Kind of like
that
manifesting
person,
something?
Because they're now spiritually linked to that book series, would begin acting the way they were being written. What that means is not just individuals you know, but people in places of power could be affected by what others say about them, even if they don't mean it to be that way. This all has to do with spiritual connection.
That's interesting.
And the greater spiritual world around us, meaning that if there exists an essence that is close enough to your essence, the two become intertwined, and whatever changes one changes the other. So think about that in our age of technology and social media.
So many people write things about so many people
online to a persona that is essentially you, alters you yourself, even if you don't mean it to. The broader implication that we have essentially built millions or billions of hypersigils without knowing it, therefore changing the course of human history.
That's really
cool.
That's a really cool concept. I like that.
Used to be a joke, but now has a lot of weight to it. See, unlike most forest or wooded areas, the Amazon forest is pretty flat. Think about it. If you look at any other wooded area in the world, there's all these hills and elevation changes to it. Whereas the Amazon rainforest is pretty flat and called the Green Inferno for a reason. The reason for this is that the ancient tribes of the area did not do agriculture with standard crops the way we think, but they did it with trees. They would harvest the wood and the sap and the water and the fruits from the trees in the way that we may do corn or something similar. We can see this whenever we look at cities that are located in the rainforest and how around them there is an abundance of biodiversity in the trees and flora of the area, and as you leave the city, it becomes more and more sparse. This implies the existence of garden cities that used to exist as a means of agriculture, and then the trees naturally populated. So there's a very good chance that a lot, if not the majority, of the rainforest was planted by humans thousands and thousands of years ago. Or at least the trees really that would go on to create the rainforest. The Gatekeeper's Remorse is a reading list that's been floating.
That sounded like it was going to be a meme.
See,
it ended up having a lot of
we're talking about
credit to
the
it.
sense of these conspiracies means someone who claims to be looking for the truth but is actually just pushing people to the wayside. Think of it this way. Say you have an author who is supposedly trying to look for the secrets of humanity, and they do that by writing several books about evolution, although the actual way we got here is alien lizards or whatever. So they spend all this time writing books for higher powers as a means of pointing people in the wrong direction. The Gatekeeper's Remorse is implying that several of these authors have had a change of heart, or they felt guilty about it and created a book or a text in order to point people back the right way. Some examples of this include Omphalos by Philip Gossa, which is a book in which someone talking about the beginning of the world says perhaps the earth was just made old. In other words, the universe and our planet isn't as old as we think it is. Or The Beginning Was the End by Oscar Mayer, in which Oscar says that the way that we got here as humans is that we used to be apes, and then we could figure it out that we eat other apes, and then when we did that, we stole their brain functions and became higher order species.
Nice.
Yeah. Here's the reading list if you're interested in any of those or think any of them might sound cool, because there's some really weird stuff in here. Broder's engine is essentially a schematic for an infinite energy machine. See, if you take a malleable metal like copper and then make it in a coil around a magnet, whenever you push the magnet through, it causes the electrons inside of the copper to shift. Whenever electrons shift, that creates electricity. So if we've got one coil and one magnet and we do that, we get a bit of electricity. Cool. But what happens if we take 1,000 of them? We all line them up directly in an order, to which whenever the magnet is moved, that causes an electron exchange, which therefore causes power. What if we put them all on a giant sort of lever that gently rocks back and forth, and the way that we power that is we just put a few of these copper magnet combinations at the bottom to power the mechanism that makes all the other magnets move. Say we build enough of these to fill up an entire warehouse, and yada yada, you could follow to the point that you could power a whole city through perpetual energy. While this has worked in closed experiments, the whole idea is we can't do it because big oil and evil electricity companies and all that good stuff. In
All that
2009,
amazing stuff.
28-year-old Shania Asom suffered an asthma attack while she was in Memphis, Tennessee. She went to the doctor, got a steroids injection, and went home, and everything seemed fine until she started to itch all over her body. She soon started developing scabs all over her skin, her legs began to darken, and the doctors couldn't figure out what the condition was, although they expected staph or some other common skin infection. However, despite all of their efforts, they couldn't make the infection go away, and after traveling to a dermatologist, it was determined that Shania had a since unknown disease. For a reason that to this day no one can explain, every hair follicle on her skin is producing about 12 times the amount of skin that it's supposed to. This causes extreme callousing everywhere in her body that hair is supposed to be, creating an effect.
And hair's everywhere on you, bro.
As if her hair follicles are growing skin so dense it's similar to a nail. And to this day, doctors have absolutely no clue what it is. They're continuing doing tests, trying to figure out the causation, but as far as they know, her hair follicles are just overproducing skin, and they're none the wiser to it. There's some stuff I cannot talk about on YouTube. So
great.
There it is. And the theory says that they are aliens.
Great.
Because of course it does.
Of course, Bobby
another
Fischer.
Alien race makes them be essentially the prison wardens of this prison planet.
Nice.
So cool. Appendix monkey tail is saying that
all right, moving past that one.
Appendix operates in the same way our monkey tail would. It's believed that our tailbone is a product of what is now called a vestigial organ, or in other words, an organ that we needed at some point in the past that we outgrew in the modern day, meaning that our tailbone used to be where a tail was attached, but now that we don't have a tail, the tailbone's kind of useless. It's now been determined that perhaps the appendix was used as a sort of digestive reboot, as a means of completely flushing the body system if it were to be too backed up by plant matter or bones or something that would be otherwise undigestible. But since we haven't eaten those things in so many years, we've slowly lost the use of it.
Right.
So again, much like our tailbone, it's something that's just there because we used to need it and now we don't, and it kind of just takes up space. This is what I get for doing the disturbing movie Iceberg. Like, there's going to be one of these horrible things in every video I do.
Every video.
From this point on.
Happy channel. Only happy thoughts around here.
Cool. All right, so you see the word. It's there, right? So according to this theory, that is used as a rite of passage in several secret societies. The reason for this is that an unholy amount of people report to the emergency room every year with this because they use the concrete to perform that action, and then they get stuck.
Of course they do.
But it's at such an alarming rate that people believe cults are responsible, or doing it as some horrible satanic rite of passage or whatever.
Scientology.
Just trying to explain why people are the way that they are. The dog suicide bridge is in reference to the Overton Bridge in Milton, Scotland.
Dog just run off.
Ever since the 1960s, an absurd amount of dogs have leaped to their death from this bridge. Keep in mind, this isn't a small bridge at all. It's 50 feet off the ground, and it doesn't really make sense for dogs, an animal that seemingly never commits suicide, to just jump off at such a given rate. It's so bad that dogs walking beneath the bridge
they smell something down there
just to jump off, and dogs that have jumped, survived, will limp their way back up to the top just to jump again.
Oh my God.
The primary theory that scientists have had around the area is that perhaps there are several minks nesting, and them marking their scent makes the dogs go for it, which sure would make sense, but that doesn't explain why dogs that are already down there around where the mink would be would climb to the top just to jump.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially why a dog would jump, climb back up, then jump again.
Yeah.
Especially since, according to legend, this has been going on since the 1960s. Many believe this to be a demonic or spiritual site in which
makes sense.
or the supernatural overwhelms these dogs to commit suicide from the bridge. I should also mention that in research for this, I found a story of in 1994, a man killed his newborn son on the bridge and then attempted to kill himself. While the stories go, the dogs have been doing this on the bridge since the 1960s. The first official reported cases of dogs jumping off began shortly thereafter.
Oh.
Just food for thought.
Okay.
Is the fact
added details.
History, there have been different cases.
Oh, okay, I like that. I like that. That's really
pro-war or pro-defense.
Hold up, that was really interesting.
After.
Okay, hold up. We're getting.
Pro-war.
We're getting. Okay, this is. Part 7 of the iceberg, bro. Things are getting more and more interesting,
Buddhism is the fact that throughout history there have been different cases of Buddhists becoming pro-war or pro-defense in order to protect themselves. Buddhists
Not
are
typically a Buddhist
traditionally
thing.
known as very hardcore pacifists,
Right.
all the way into the face of death, or at least the traditional Buddhist monks are. While it's well known that
Right.
in South Vietnam around 1963, whenever there was heavy Buddhist oppression occurring in the area, Buddhists began to make very open protest and shut down roadways in response to the killing of Buddhists that was happening under the Vietnamese regime. What is lesser known is some of the more modern instances. I also want to emphasize, I'm not saying anything about overarching religion or
Right.
like specific ins and outs of religious beliefs in certain areas or Thailand.
Right.
I am again describing a very complex situation
In a minute.
in a couple minutes. So,
Yeah.
again, bear with me. In Thailand in 2004,
I got you, man. I got you.
several Buddhist monks were attacked and killed by Muslim attackers. In response to this, several of these Buddhist monks began to arm themselves. Now, traditionally in Buddhist beliefs, this is completely shunned. However, there
Right.
were interesting ways that they worked around it. For example, as you can imagine, a Buddhist monk cannot be a member of the military. However, the Thai military began these suspended enlistment programs in which you could kind of be part of the military, but not really part of the military. So the sort of in the military people became traditional monks in order to protect other monks that existed in the Thai region. One of the
Okay.
stories I was reading was an interviewer who was speaking with one of these monks in 2006, and they asked the monk if it was true that some of the monks were arming themselves, and the monk lifted up his robe, pulled out a handgun, put it back, and they just continued the interview.
Legendary.
It's a very interesting example of how far even the most peaceful people will go if they're pushed, or as the saying says, even a worm will turn. The Akashic Records put forward by psychic Edgar Casey is a means of better understanding psychicness itself. According to Casey, whenever he would conduct psychic links with people, he would for one connect to them, but the second connection would be to something that he called the Book of Life. He describes this as a sort of cloud storage that exists all around us and everywhere at the same time. It contains the memories, thoughts, actions, and beliefs of every human that has ever existed. According to Casey, we are all connected through this super link, and possible memories or glimpses and even dreams that we have at any given point can either be from another human who's experienced them or a combination of all the different brain patterns mixing with.
That's an interesting thought concept.
Cloud farming or cloud
like that.
seeding is exactly what it says. Throughout history, there have been cases of governments purposefully farming clouds in order to get whatever agricultural benefit they want. This is done by planes depositing chemicals into the air that encourage precipitation. The most common is like potassium iodes or even dry ice being used in order to begin to form ice crystals and therefore create snow. However, historically, sometimes things like silver iodes have been used, which aren't good for people to, like breathe in or drink or something
that's
like
not
that.
good.
See, the thing with it is, this isn't necessarily creating rain clouds. It's just a way to encourage rain cloud formation. So if you know that rain clouds are about to form, you can deposit them into an area in order to speed it up and move the direction the cloud will travel. This has led to countries like China having their neighbors accuse them of literally stealing the rain so that China can have better agriculture.
You stole my rain, bro.
Limbic brain is often used as an excuse of why some people do the things that they do. See, whenever we're comfortable, happy, and accepted in a situation, we operate using our prefrontal cortex. This is the part of the brain most commonly associated with reason and complex thought patterns. However, sitting just below and behind our prefrontal cortex is something that's often called the limbic brain. This is our system that derives on emotion and instinct. Whenever we're operating off of it, we're much more manic and reactive and emotional whenever we're put into a situation. This isn't only the fight or flight response that you may be familiar with, but also things like heartbreak or loneliness and how we kind of rely on our emotional state rather than our logical state. Obviously, this isn't a state of mind that you want to keep up for any amount of time. So putting it short term, whenever you're happy, part of a group, and content, you are thinking logically, and whenever you're alone, depressed, and unsure of your purpose in life, you're thinking emotionally. This is kind of obvious, but where it matters is in its sociology implications. Part of the reason that people may do evil things is simply because they do not want to be reverted to their limbic brain and have to interact on their own. Or in other words, people don't want to be alone, so they will do things that may be morally reprehensible in order to fit in. Emergency broadcast.
Gotta add it, guys. Make sure, once again, subscribe and like so that we can afford YouTube Premium.
Broadcast neuralizers is referencing the sounds that are heard at the beginning of an emergency broadcast. See, the concept of a neuralizer is that it homes in on specific brain waves or syncs out brain waves in order to manipulate memory or thought patterns or something like that. The thought is emergency broadcasts are used to either forcefully calm you, alter your memory, or change your perception of events around you. Basically, emergency broadcast systems are used as a means of forced complacency on the population. This is another one of those misinfo ones. However, it's a fun misinfo.
Simpson is obviously real, guys.
Entire chart, huge theory to this thing.
What?
Which I will link in the description. About how The Simpsons is actually real footage taken through a wormhole of another United States government that radioactively hurt the people, and blah 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 blah. Weird hokey pokey science stuff. However, this is an example of misinfo because this is put on the list, as I've mentioned before, and with the parrot as a means of subverting wandering eyes. Because once again, think about it this way: if there's stuff down here that matters, and if there's stuff down here that could be serious that you don't want other people to see, whenever they look at a list that says something along the lines of The Simpsons is real footage, they go, oh, okay, it's just more weird hoax lizard alien people stuff. So as mentioned before, this is a parrot. Roman metaphysics takes heavy inspiration from Greek metaphysics, or what is essentially
most things in Rome take heavy inspiration from Greek stuff.
The study of what's real. See, ancient Greeks philosophers were constantly looking for ways to better describe life or to describe the world around us. Metaphysics was an attempt to define what is real or what can be determined in the real world. There were two primary competing philosophies within ancient Greek, one of which being that we must always rely on our senses to determine what's real in a world that's ever changing, or that we must always rely on logical reasoning because our senses can lie to us in this changing world. Plato best described it as this: say that we have a chair, and we all understands what a chair means.
Platonic idea.
We exclusively use our senses to tell us what a chair is, and we only know what one kind of chair looks like. Does that mean a chair can only be what we think it should look like, or can there exist different forms of chairs? On the other side, we can't always just be logical or use reasoning to determine it, because say we do something arbitrary like, oh, well, a chair has 4 legs and you can sit on it. That means a cow, a horse, and big dogs are also just forms of chairs. This led Plato and later Aristotle to develop the idea that they refer to as hylomorphism. This is the core concept of the idea that there are forms and matter, and that despite changes, there must always be some constant, even if we're not aware of it. Put most simply, it's a roundabout way of saying that a chair can look like a ton of different things, but we know what a chair is.
We know what a chair is,
so that's still a chair, which means it's got to have something in common with every...
Basically, it's saying, I don't want to explain what a goddamn chair is. It's a chair because I know it's a damn chair.
Every other chair that exists, even if they don't look anything alike. A lot of this metaphysics gets into ideas of how it applies to people. For example, Aristotle said that despite he did not exist beforehand, his form and matter was still created into the creature that is now known as Aristotle. Therefore, there has to be through lines, even if unseen, that connect whatever present self exists to the past and future self. What's so interesting is that despite being written in ancient Greek times and then adapted into Roman times, these are basically the modern principles that we use for theoretical physics. That things have to have constants in order to be understood as they apply to a greater world that we know not of, and how these connections can be manipulated. It's so interesting that all the way back then they were unintentionally or possibly intentionally laying the groundwork for the greater universe as we see it today. Prison Earth refers to the idea that we exist on an earthly prison. Think of it this way. Throughout all of human history, there has always been a need and a struggle for something. On the grand scale, it's been order, resources, agriculture, or in the modern day of power and wealth, all the way down to the individual, fighting for personal recognition or even just the ability to breathe and take in food. Now, of course, this is all we know of life to be, and it's hard to imagine a life without it, but perhaps this constant need for something implies that we are supposed to exist in a realm of pure ecstasy, or a realm of pure not need. Thrive, that's the word. A place where we thrive instead of survive. Yeah. So that's like the philosophy side of it. Here's the creepy moon part. A lot of these theories say that the moon itself was constructed. Examples being, geological samples have said that the moon is older than the Earth. Craters on the moon have been identified as depressions. In other words, they have been sucked in from within the moon. The prevailing theory behind this is that the moon itself is hollow.
Hollow moon theory.
Or at least whatever structure
Jinx.
is inside of it is allowing this extra space to cave in. There is a completely abnormal amount of titanium on the surface of the moon, and several seismic activities have been reported on the surface of the moon despite nothing causing them. In other words, whatever's doing it had to come from the inside, leading to the belief that many of this prison Earth theory have, that the moon itself was made as an observatory to watch us from, and is essentially acting as our giant warden, making sure that we don't get too far from the Earth. And then you can
the moon, hollow moon theory. Moon is fake.
And say that with the Mars bunker theory that
Moon
was
is the
our
Death Star
prison before, and then we got sent to this one.
Oh.
And if we ever try to go past the realm of the moon, we'll get shot down or something like that.
Oh my god.
And that's what the 9 minutes of the missing Apollo 11 mission was, and it's all connected.
Oh my
or
god.
Just go with the theory that the moon is a giant space monster egg that's going to break out and kill us all.
It's Cthulhu.
I like that one. Inorganic.
A lot of these are really even if you don't believe in these conspiracies, a lot of these are cool like concepts for like fiction.
Beings implies the existence of non-carbon life, but not only non-carbon, non-physical. See, this is hard for us to even imagine because everything of our understanding of life exists in the physical or things that interact with the physical, like ghosts or spirits. Think about something that doesn't even exist on the same plane of dimension of us, but
it's
does
impossible
take up
for
the
us to
same space.
comprehend.
If these things are entirely spiritual or aura-based creatures, then perhaps what they feed on, in the same way we feed on other organic materials, is auras and spirituality itself. You can run a lot of cool theories with this and say that perhaps haunted locations are just these things' feeding ground. And whenever people go there and experience fear, that energy they're giving off through fear provides food for these creatures.
Like Monsters, Inc.
You can go even further with that and say perhaps UFO sightings or monster sightings and things like that are mind alterations made on people from these non-organic creatures as a means of maintaining energy. So don't worry. It's not a monster under your bed.
It's just
a super fourth dimensional
trying to obtain energy
that is creating fear within your body in order to harvest your energy.
So nothing to be afraid of.
Nothing to be afraid of. Sleep deprivation lifestyle.
Well, both have the same
refers
joke
to
there.
what
Nice.
happens if someone undergoes long-term sleep deprivation. As we know, without
Sleep
sleep for
experiment.
long periods of time, people begin to lose cognitive and social functions. However, there are theories that if someone goes a really long time on amount of sleep deprivation, they will lose functions such as consciousness. There's been a lot of cool theories proposed with this one, that that's what allows the id of our brain to take over, or our more primal self, or perhaps certain spirits or things that exist within this world can inhabit our bodies
if
we
don't
allow
sleep.
that consciousness to be so worn away.
Ooh.
I talked about the Russian sleep experiment in like tier 1 or 2 of this iceberg. So imagine this as the practical version to carry out that. Dinosaurs helped build the pyramids.
Yes!
Whenever I saw the conspiracy theory iceberg and wanted to do a video on it, this is what I was hoping for. A lot less depression, a lot more dinosaur. Discovered a few kilometers
Put that on a
from
shirt.
the Great Pyramids of Egypt, lesser pyramids have been found that contain papyri that have some interesting transcriptions on them. In these papyri, it talks about giant beasts, or god beasts as they're called, that were used in order to build the pyramids. It says things like they carried the limestone across the rivers and were used to haul the large weighing rocks that were used in order to construct the pyramid. In these transcriptions,
this is my best. This is a favorite theory.
That they ate the grass of the Nile plains, that their tail was large enough that a swing could kill a whole army, that their neck reached to the clouds, and even contained several inscriptions and images of these supposed creatures. While things like this have always been referenced in, say, Job, that dinosaurs existed much closer to humans than we think, now several Egyptologists, which I didn't know was a thing before,
Egyptologists,
some of them have gotten on board with this and said, yeah, perhaps the pyramids were built with the assistance of dinosaurs.
Wow, I actually have some credit to it.
Is the nicest thing I think I've said in this entire iceberg.
That's the greatest thing of all time.
Puppet show relates to the Anunnaki, which I mentioned however many tiers ago, which were the supposed alien gods of the Babylonians and the Sumerians. See, the Sumerians, as I mentioned before with things like the Dogon tribe, had very weird things when it came to their religion and beliefs. Like, for example, they had very accurate tracings of our
way too accurate than it should have been,
and our solar system. And as mentioned before, they had these idols of beings that they said came from the stars and taught them science and agriculture and things like that. The Babylonians were very similar. As a matter of fact, some believe the Old Testament translations that were mentioned of these Babylonians whenever they would talk about the angels coming down or God coming down, was actually just a version of these Anunnaki. So much so that people say the Tower of Babel, in which, according to the Bible, God confused their languages, was actually a space station they were building to go to the stars.
Yes!
To which the Anunnaki then confused their language.
These theories are getting cooler and cooler. This is great.
So, yeah. The puppet show belief is that the reason the Anunnaki have done all this is simply for entertainment, and that watching us progress as a society has been this whole escapade that they get to watch from a distance. However, I like the other theory proposed by it. See, several of these Anunnaki images or things we see, although normally reptilian, seem kind of human. The belief being that sometime in the future we will develop a time travel technology, or at least a different reality version.
And look at ourselves.
So then from the future, we come to the past, we alter things that happen in the course of human history for whatever reason in the Sumerian and Babylonian Empire, and then watch how it plays out.
Yes.
So rather than just a puppet show for entertainment, perhaps this existence,
like a 2K simulation,
all of our human history is just an experiment for whatever our future selves.
That's these are all really cool theories. These theories, I don't know if they're getting more believable, but they're getting way more cool the more we go on, man.
That we've seen
way
science,
cooler,
such as not being able to understand time travel or understand how gravity or perpetual travel or something like that works, is these observers of our timeline
making sure we don't
manipulating it so that we don't get too far out of our box. And that is it for part
And they built the moon. It all makes sense.
1 of tier 7.
Alright, so that's it for part 1 of tier 7, and let's go on to part 2. Alright, and now we're on to part 2.
Hello everybody, and we are back with tier 7 part 2 of the conspiracy theory Iceberg. Real quick, before we get started, a couple things I want to mention. I now officially have an artist who's going to be doing the work for me.
Nice.
She's actually the person who did my logo design, which is my profile picture and the design that went on the sweaters. But it looks like she's going to be doing future designs as well, so I'm going to link her information in the description below along with the editor. So if you want to follow either of them, I encourage you to check them out. And also, even though he may never see this, thank you, Mr. GG, for shouting out my video. It's so wild seeing people that I've watched for literal years say me by name and put me on stuff, and it really does mean the most. So, Mr. GG, if you ever see this, thank you so much.
He must have.
We're going to go ahead and get into this, but as always, thank you for watching. Rapture already happened is in reference to the rapture event mentioned in the biblical text of Revelations. For those that don't know, there's debate among Christian groups of when exactly the rapture is supposed to take place. Not only like what year it will happen, but when it will happen within the actual telling of the end of the world itself. See, there's something mentioned in the book of Revelations known as the tribulation period. This is a period of time in...
My phone just turned on for some reason. I was fun to look at my YouTube studio for a bit, and then it just showed. Did you hate when you click on YouTube and it just shows up YouTube Shorts? You're like clicking on YouTube, like, alright, I gotta find a video, and it just flashed you a random ass YouTube short. It's annoying as hell.
Which the Earth goes from doing really, really well of the end of the world itself. See, there's something mentioned in the book of Revelations known as the tribulation period. This is a period of time in which the Earth goes from doing really, really well to really, really bad in a span of 7 years. However, if someone was of the belief that,
basically,
in the book of Genesis, when it talks about how the world was formed, that the world was formed in 7 days, that it's not actually 7 days and more like 7,000 years, then imagine what 7-year tribulation period would actually be. In other words, if you're not literal with interpretations of time in the Bible, then a 7-year tribulation period might as well be 7,000. So in the Bible, when it mentions that during the tribulation period, God no longer interacts with the world, the devil has full control of it, and evil run rampant, and if that is a period of time like 7,000 years, then what's to say we're not currently living in that? As a matter of fact, there are some beliefs that the rapture happened immediately after Jesus' crucifixion, which would mean that we're all living in a devil-controlled world and God won't hear us.
Seems like it.
Again, only positive vibes on this channel.
Only positive vibes.
Is in reference to journalist William Grider. Grider wrote from everyone from the Washington Times to the Rolling Stones. However, the work that puts him on his list is his 1987 book, Secrets of the Temple: How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country. The book essentially talks about how there is a secret society that exists underneath the United States government, and how they're proliferated through the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is building up a plan in order to enact a new world order. and Illuminati and all that
Lizard
stuff.
people.
It's another theory that falls in line with the idea that banking circles are the ones actually running the country, and
Wouldn't be
politicians
surprised.
essentially exist as figureheads. Soy spraying and
Wouldn't be
weaponized soy
surprised.
is in reference to the proliferation of soy products in modern industry.
Soy boy.
If you'll notice in the last few years especially, soy has popped up more and more as either a substitute or a source in different foods and supplements. However, soy itself is an actual estrogen supplement, and when consumed by males in large quantities, can lead to testosterone deficiency. What the theory is saying is that the powers that be have put soy products everywhere they're not supposed to be in order to demoralize and demasculate their people who could theoretically overturn them if they ever saw fit. You can go further and say that with weaponized soy, that similar to how governments, especially the United States government, has been accused of psyops and long-term chemical warfare over time, the exact same thing, but with soy products in order to make the enemy less masculine. So what I'm saying is government-sanctioned weaponized femboys. Yeah.
Put that on a shirt right now. Government-sanctioned weaponized femboys.
Bicameralism comes from a 1976 book written by Julian Jayes. Julian had a very interesting theory from where human consciousness came from. His idea was that as early as 3,000 years ago, the original forms of consciousness began to be created, and that before that, the brain was divided into two parts. One part told the other what to do, and the second part acted on it. And while you may think that's how consciousness works on its own, I am saying that it is a very literal, one side of your brain communicates to the other side has no thought process and simply carries out an action. This means that there is no form of contemplation, decision making,
no free will
in the way that we would think of it now. One of Julian's references to this is such as the characters that were mentioned in the Iliad never really thought or decided what they were doing. Instead, they just kind of did things. So according to this theory, before the past 3 millennia, society existed with no meaning of self-awareness. And according to this theory, as society developed, we began to find the need to ask ourselves why, so the two sides of our brain kind of formed over the one that seems to ask questions, and that became the modern form of consciousness. Or in other words, the commanded part of the brain learned to think for itself, and the part that gave commands simply began to ask questions. Staring anxiety is the most literal form of brain rot.
So basically, everyone before like 3,000 years ago was just like doing things. And there's no logic, just like, well, I guess I'm just doing.
In this theory, staring at any electronic screen for an amount of time will fry your brain. And
well. This is kind of ironic.
Not in the way that a parent would tell you to stop playing video games, they fry your brain. In a literal, your neurons begin to shut off and die kind of way. This would, of course, over time make a modern population a lot dumber. So therefore, this theory is saying that the reason screens are everywhere around us and proliferated so much is a way for the elites to further control us mentally.
Well, now I don't want to watch this long video you made, Wendigoon.
Ancient structure purpose is a huge topic to tackle, but I can get a few of them out of the way. For example, there are theories that ancient pyramids and ziggurats were actually the beginning of a sort of mining facility. Or in other words, whatever beings actually created them was doing so in order to stage a way to get inside of the earth, maybe even hollow earth. Whereas other theories talk about how societies had these very advanced forms of architecture that doesn't really make sense for the time they were in. For example, in China, people built entire palaces into the sides of cliffs, something that is hard to understand and hard to accomplish by today's means. Furthermore, in Persia, they managed to run water systems off of the top of snow-capped mountains all the way down into their cities in order to have year-round cold water. A lot of this also
very
gets
advanced
back into
things.
the idea of sacral architecture, which is essentially architecture that is created for the sake of
a lot of theories about things from the past are just way so advanced.
Sacredness rather than
not much
purpose.
explanation.
So you could think of this as like temples and buildings of religious worship. A lot of them are believed to be too advanced for their time or too advanced for the people that lived around these structures. So therefore, some special means created them rather than just the people themselves.
Lizards.
And I also have to mention my favorite theory, which I talked about in the last episode, that the Tower
Dinosaurs
of Babel was a launching platform for the Anunnaki aliens to shoot their spaceship back into space.
You're damn right.
Yeah.
And dinosaurs built the pyramids. You heard it here.
Is actually something that I mentioned.
We got an ad, guys. Subscribe and like to get rid of the ads.
All the way back in tier 2. Roto-Rooter, if you'll remember, is a comic that supposedly has a hidden meaning, saying that our political leaders want to return us to a gold standard in order to leave banking organizations. This all kind of falls back on the idea that banks and politics have hated each other and don't shake hands and get along as much as we may think they do. However, real intentions for the Roto-Rooter is an entire game plan for exactly how they're going to do it. Short version goes like this. Step 1, in the 1970s, all of the world's banking systems became ran by computers. Part 2, because of this, secret cabals or cults around the world managed to have control of what markets rose and fall and were able to build wealth by riding off of it. Step 3, ever since the early 1900s, the United States has been hiding its actual capabilities and resources so that now in the modern day they can manage to produce false scarcity, creating scarcity among other nations, which then the US can find all of these resources and then maintain themselves as a world power. This is all saying that supposedly banks are getting in the way of that grand scheme. And in other words, markets can be used as a way to subvert things like fossil fuels. Step 4, ever since 9/11, these politicians have wanted banking groups out of their inner circles and have actively been making steps in order to remove their technological influence. Step 5, which is where we're currently at,
very big,
is
really
that
complicated.
the politicians or elites are trying to build up crypto money, trading, lending, whatever,
Bored
to
Ape
such a degree that it will
Nazi Club
inevitably crash all around the world, which will lead to a need for a new system, which is when they can then step in and create the new gold standard. Most drugs are benevolent is saying that most drugs, if not all drugs, are actually helpful to the human body, but are therefore stigmatized or poisoned by the powers that be so that we don't become too powerful. This is considered because drugs can possibly unlock new potential in the human brain, which would be bad to the people who want to subjugate us and keep us under their rule if we suddenly sort of evolved. A lot of this goes back to the stoned ape theory.
So basically,
which is the
do
idea
heroin.
that the reason we evolved from monkeys into what we are now is that monkeys eventually figured out how to use hallucinogenics, which opened up new brain pathways, which created us. So in other words,
monkeys got so
our
high that they
leaders
became
who want us
smarter.
under their thumb do not want
That's
us
why when you get high, you get all those questions, like the whole meme.
go through another cycle of evolution. Closely related to that is the theory of proto-humans. Proto-humans is the idea that there was more than just one kind of pre-human like we think there was. Like, for example, the Neanderthal DNA, which every human has a portion of, can actually be found in different variations and even mixed with different kind of genomes depending on what region of the world you're in. For example, in some parts of the world, in the portion that would mostly be Neanderthal, there is something known as Denisovan DNA, which is believed to be a competitor to the Neanderthal gene. This is implying that there was a lot more complicated roots of humanity than we may think there are, and in other words, probably very violent competition led to the modern humanity that we know today. Dublin, Wisconsin is the town that doesn't exist. Supposedly there was a town in the Sparta Green Bay area of Wisconsin that just disappeared in between the 80s and 90s. Officially there exist no records of it. However, there is still tourist memorabilia that people have. Certain people have memories of a small town being destroyed by either a fire or a gas leak, depending on who you ask. And people even supposedly received radio transmissions from radio stations in Dublin all the way into the late 90s. Whenever I was doing research for this, there were like 1,000 people who went missing in the late 80s and early 90s around the Green Bay area. And also the guys who were supposedly receiving the radio signals were all dead. So I'm sure that's not troubling.
That's very troubling.
Originally comes from the same Blyfield logic.
All right then.
Tier 3, I think it was, which essentially follows the whole logic of, have you ever been?
That's really interesting. The Dublin one.
Do you know anyone from Finland? Well, then Finland just doesn't exist if you answer no to both of those. It's along the whole lines of believing.
It's like a Mandela effect, but there's actual evidence that it existed.
From Finland, you're fed If you know someone from Finland, they're a Fed.
Obviously, Finland doesn't exist, guys.
The Feds tricked you. Also, in research, I found this copy pasta that is too funny to not mention. So the population of Finland is about 6.5 million people. Now,
I've seen this.
The population of the entire world, which is about 7.2 billion. Finland makes up 0.09% of the world's population. It's not 1%, it's not even 0.1%. Or in other words, 99.9% of people who exist in the world are not from Finland. We get this number from government census, which government census has a percent error of about 1%. Or in other words, about 10 times the amount of percent that Finland makes up in the world. In other words, by statistical standards, there's a pretty solid chance that Finland does not exist. So if you're from Finland,
nice.
I hate to be the one to break the news.
You don't exist, dog.
But you're not real. Sorry.
It's true.
Also, it's so wild that like sitting here just talking into a camera, there's a solid chance that someone from Finland will see this.
If you're from Finland, which I highly doubt anyone watching this from Finland, you don't exist.
Exist as coded radio messages that are used to send transmissions to foreign intelligence agencies from behind enemy lines. Or think of it this way. Say during the Cold War there was a Russian spy in the United States, and he needs to get information back to his Russian handlers. Well, he can't just get on a radio and begin saying exactly what he wants to tell them, because then anyone could listen in and anyone could figure out what he's doing. But if he was to just send numbers that corresponded to a code grid that the Russians had, well then no one would know what he's trying to say except for the people he wants to hear it. Now I need to make it clear, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is a very open practice that has existed all the way from
it makes sense, right?
In which they did the same thing with Morse code. And during the Cold War, this was a very preferred method of transmitting information out of the country. However, what's interesting is the proliferation of how they exist today. To just give an example, there are several old radio towers that exist in a sort of swampland just outside of St. Petersburg, Russia. For the past 40 years, there's been a broadcast coming out of there that has been titled MDZHB, and all that it is one continuous droning noise, and every few seconds there's a sound that sounds similar to a foghorn. Not only that, but
that's
once
weird.
or twice a week, either a man or woman will come on and just say random words in Russian, implying that whatever words are being said is a sort of code. And if you've got a radio that can pick up on the signal, since it's shortwave, you can tune in to 4625 KHZ and listen to it at any time. The leading theory with this radio station is that it's potentially part of the Russian government, which explains why they don't do anything about it or really care that it's there. And furthermore,
it's really creepy.
Dead hand signal, or in other words, that monotone string is keeping something from happening, say a nuclear device. These are actually in themselves not a conspiracy, as there have been devices that are made to pick up on a certain radio frequency, and if that frequency ever stops, the device detonates. This is sort of like a last laugh protocol. So say if there was some explosive in a foreign country and that foreign country attacked Russia, therefore destroying the radio signal, they get blown up as well. This is just one of many number
It makes
stations.
sense.
And there are a whole lot weirder ones I found, such as the Lincolnshire poacher. I found enough information that I'm definitely going to be doing a deeper dive on this, just to talk about all the different number stations that have been found around the world.
I don't think you ever did.
There are some weird ones.
I haven't seen the one on his channel.
Speaking of the series of deaths that occur on Everest.
There's so many deaths that occur on Everest.
Covered up. I've already spoke before about the Sherpas of Mount Everest and the legends of the Himalayan zombies in the regions around. However, this one has a bit more wider stretching application. See, you may not know this, but if someone dies on Mount Everest,
they can't get them,
recover the body.
Because it's too hard to get them.
The reason for it is because once you pass a certain point in altitude, it is way too dangerous to try to get people to recover something than it is to just leave it.
They use as landmarkers,
I
think, right?
That in most cases, the body never really decomposes. What this means is there are near
We got an ad. Once again, make sure to like and subscribe to get rid of the ads.
Perfectly preserved bodies all over the mountain of Mount Everest, and not only that, they are used as trail markers in order for climbers to find them.
I know.
Up. And researching this, there's a lot of weird stories. Like they talk about reaching the destination of Green Boots Cave because there's a dead body out front that has green boots. Almost all these deaths are attributed to exhaustion, which makes sense considering the feats that they have to accomplish in such a low oxygen environment. Furthermore, there are nearly 200 bodies on the mountain itself. But here's what's weird. So I said most of them don't decompose, but some of them do, and some of them decompose immediately next to bodies that don't decompose at all.
That's
Which means
weird.
you can have two people up on the mountain, each there for decades. One is a skeleton and the other seems like a perfectly intact person who's just sleeping. Combine that
That's
with
weird.
the fact that certain hikers have reported that bodies have been found where they're not supposed to be, and then combine that with the Himalayan zombies legend that I mentioned earlier,
zombies.
and then mix all that in with the legends of the Sherpas who guard the secret Shangri-La, which is considered an entrance to Hollow Earth and protected by spirits.
How did this wrap around to Agartha?
Implicitous. Tau conspiracy
Implicitous.
is a conspiracy that's kind of obvious, but you may have never thought about, that the paper towel dispensers that look like they have a camera in it absolutely have a camera in it. Now, of course, it's illegal.
I mean, I
to
would not be
put a camera in the
even
bathroom
remotely
for
surprised by that.
obvious reasons. However, when has that ever stopped certain powers that be from spying on their people? This wouldn't just stop at the motion sensors on paper towel dispensers, but also urinals and toilets, because gross, and fills in the loophole that in such a surveillance state there would be so many obvious blind spots that people can get away with whatever they're doing, unless they aren't blind spots and they just want you to think they are. All religions are the same is a concept that's kind of been mentioned in tiers earlier, that all religions can be traced back to a single founder.
I mean, this one actually,
So, like,
it makes a lot of sense when you look at a lot of religions.
Anunnaki coming down from space, or your ideas of Jesus, or what have you. The idea being that there was one original event that happened, and then as culture spread out, the story simply adapted with each culture. This would explain the reason
I think this is the most
that so many
plausible religion
cultures
theory.
have the same ideas
If religion
of
is
heaven
real.
and hell, even if they're named different, ideas of a godhead, and summing of salvation either through works or belief, all the way down to concepts like angels and demons. Essentially saying that all religions are the same, just extra steps away from whatever the original source was. Valley of Lost Candles is a reference to stolen props from the 1967 movie, The Valley of the Dolls. The plot of Valley of the Dolls was a group of girls who go to Hollywood in order to become famous and slowly have to give away pieces of themselves in one way or the other in order to achieve that goal. Given the mysterious nature of things that happen underground in Hollywood, the movie was kind of seen at a look behind the veil of what goes on in the industry.
Yeah, not very good.
Supposedly, several of the props, such
things.
as candles that were used on the movie, were used in actual witchcraft and carried bad spirits with them. After the movie was over, several of these props went missing. One story even says that they were stolen by critic Roger Ebert. Theories in this lead all the way to say that perhaps one of the reasons that one of the film's lead role, Sharon Tate, was killed in such a grisly manner is because she made the spirits upset by losing their possessions. Advanced cryptozoology
that one goes
is
deep.
exactly what it says. Advanced levels of standard cryptozoology, or in other words, the stories of creatures that may or may not exist. Now, when most people think of cryptids, they think of things like Bigfoot and Mothman and other known characters in cryptid lore. However, there is a wealth of creatures out there that exist that the majority of people have never even heard of. Things that exist in an esoteric fashion, or are figments of the mind that have been manifested into creatures. This all gives the implication that the world is much more proliferated.
Stuff like that is really cool
that we can't explain
to learn about
than
stuff.
we like to think. I'm going to save it there, because my next video is going to be a huge dive into cryptids and advanced cryptids themselves with a special guest who I'm excited for. So this is a teaser for that. Just wait. Asian Overlords Trio.
I don't know if I watched that one. So
the idea that mobs in Asia have much more power than most people think. Specifically Eastern Asia, in which regions like Hong Kong have one of the most powerful crime syndicates in the world. The idea being that by running connections back and figuring out who pays who, these crime syndicates control a lot of the politics that exist in the Chinese government.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Only that, but the idea that the reason crime is allowed to be so proliferated in the underground world of Hong Kong is because the Chinese government is allowing them to exist, and they have a sort of symbiotic relationship in order to keep Hong Kong in check. This applies further.
That's not surprising at all.
Can be said about the Yakuza in Japan, and even Asian mobs that supposedly act independently throughout other parts of the world are actually controlled by a centralized government. Looking at dark energy is our next super weird physics concept. So known matter in the universe makes up like 20% of everything that supposedly exists. Dark energy makes up about 25. The rest is dark matter, but we're not talking about that right now. Supposedly dark energy exists absolutely everywhere and does not conform to any of our understanding of electronics, magnetics, heat, or anything that we can really use to prove its existence.
All
the
right.
reason this is theorized is because gaps that exist in our understanding of how molecules and the world operate around us. And several believe that we are on the fringe of technology to being able to create something that can detect this dark energy. While some believe this can be used as a sort of power source that would be pretty much infinite, considering it makes up more matter than the matter that exists in our known universe. Others theorize that perhaps the reason we can't see it is because we're not supposed to, and perhaps these are the fibers that hold us together from a fabricated reality we exist in. The 2006 volleyball incident is the tragedy that never happened. See, a lot of people remember that there was an event of some kind, either a school shooting or a bombing, that happened during a high school volleyball game in 2006. Stories range, but everyone remembers that it came from either the Nebraska or Dakotas region of the United States, and several people remember specific details of people saying that it was worse than Columbine. There are several stories that exist online of people traveling to, say, Mount Rushmore, and then hearing on the radio that there has been a, quote, massacre at a high school. People remembering having conversations about how awful it is and how this relates to the bigger issue of gun control, and even weird details like the gym had a blue mascot, and in crime scene images, the net from the volleyball game was still up. However, there's no record of this, and there's no official reports that ever happened, and although people can vary on small details of the story, everyone universally agrees that it did happen who remember it. Most who believe the 2006 volleyball
really weird.
say it is
a really specific
thing. Extreme example of the Mandela effect, or some form of government cover-up for a reason that isn't really known. Artificial Aliens says that perhaps aliens aren't just non-carbon based, like we began to theorize, but are not organic based or organic in any sense that we understand. You know those random radio waves that we hear from space every now and then? What if that's simply these things' manner of communication? What if these things don't even have a form of consciousness and exist as a life so far set apart from ours that we don't really comprehend it? Some even tie this
That's a good deal why we haven't found them.
Of humanity's cycle, which I'll mention at some point either in this Iceberg or a different video. But the idea that like a million years ago we were a functioning technological society and we sent these artificial creatures into space and they began to proliferate for themselves. And now these aliens that we're talking to are simply creatures we created out there in the cosmos.
Ooh, that's cool.
The secret Mongolian Empire.
That's a cool thought concept. Hold up, bro. We got an ad. Once again, make sure to like and subscribe. Why am I getting alcohol ads? I am 15 years old.
Is in reference to the idea that the Mongolian Empire never existed. Think about it this way. The Mongolian Empire would be the only empire that had no linguistic or cultural effects on the world around them after their disappearance. Not only that, but there exists no architecture to prove that they were ever a society structured together. And yes, while they were recorded as a nomadic society, there should still be something that shows where they are and where they inhabited. On top of that, there exists no Mongolian folklore or form of religion or legend or anything like that. It seems as they simply appeared then disappeared at random. Now, what we do know existed was Genghis Khan and the actions he committed in the area that is now known as China. The idea behind this theory is that Genghis Khan and the actions he committed in the area that is now known as China.
The way it cut it looked like he changed shirts. I think it was the lighting change.
On to create another government or society that wanted to continue to exist in the modern world, and so as to cover up their history to not appear as barbarians, they created the Mongolian Empire as a farce in order to write away their bad history. Non-space is another crazy physics concept, and the too long didn't read version would be a reverse black hole. The concept would essentially look
reverse black hole.
So a black hole, as we understand it, is a gravitational center that is so intense it pulls everything in that's around it, including light itself. Okay, well, let's say we created a vacuum through whatever means that sucked all matter out of a certain area, let's say an area the size of this water bottle. We've done that before, right? We've created vacuums in an area. But what if we used an energy that was so concentrated, we didn't just take all of the atoms out of this area, we took gravity itself out of this area. So now we have a perfectly absolute empty vacuum of space. Well, what that would do all at once is create an implosion. When all the gravity around this area immediately rushes to fill it, it would move at a rate so fast and so powerful that we don't really have numbers to comprehend it. So if you're thinking about this from a mass and energy perspective, the amount of energy being created by no change in mass would be astronomical. And while this is a concept that would normally be impossible, concepts now being proven with high energy plasma say that we may be able to get an energy high enough to be able to remove that and therefore create even more energy through the implosion of gravity around it. This could, in theory, create a near infinite energy source, or at
there's
the
been a lot of
least,
infinite energy
means of harvesting
theories about creating an infinite energy source in this iceberg, man.
As a form.
You told me we can't make any of them?
Or, as I mentioned, however many tiers ago, using a machine that can use gravity as a means of transportation through space. That's one possibility. The other possibility is it creates a super black hole and we all die in the blink of an eye.
I know, that would be
not
great.
a problem anymore. New Zealand 8th continent is saying that the country of New Zealand is not part of the Australian continent as most believe, but actually its own separate entity.
It is a tectonic plate, isn't it?
New Zealand and New Caledonia have been analyzed underwater, and it's been shown that they exist on a plate separate of that of Australia.
Yeah, it's not a different tectonic plate.
That whatever landmass New Zealand was a part of broke away from the shelves around it some however many long years ago, and New Zealand is one of the only structures that still stick up from this sunken 8th continent. And if once again,
I thought that was confirmed.
In past years, there are several theories that there are missing continents or one giant missing
I could
continent.
have swore that was like a confirmed thing.
Where
I've heard before. I don't know, maybe not.
Different societies' influence on the world today, such as Lemuria, the answers to these missing gaps in societal history could exist in the sunken part of New Zealand, or if you're me, the underwater part of New Zealand is where the caves to Agartha are.
Yes!
And you can't tell me otherwise. And that is it for part 2 of Tier 7.
Alright, we're done with part 2, now on to part 3.
Welcome to Tier 7, Part 3 of the Conspiracy Theory Iceberg.
Let's go.
First things first, I just did a collaboration with Scrabble, who is a YouTuber who he and I became close because we both started at about the same time. And he is an excellent YouTuber.
Great.
Way better editing than me, and I wanted to make sure
you don't need editing, man.
Go and check out his channel because I really do mean it. He is not only a great guy, but a great creator too. A lot of people have asked me to do collaborations as of late, and I just want to put it out there that I do this. I'm a full-time college student. I have personal relationships I try to keep up with, so I'm pulled pretty thin as is. So for the most part, I can't just say yes to everyone who asks because, and I don't mean this to be braggadocious at all, just if I took the time to be a part of everyone's video who asked, there'd be no time for this or something else in my life. So I really do have to pick and choose who it is. But Scrabble is a good friend who was very encouraging to me when I first started, so I wanted to do the same for him. So if you're interested, it's a great video about childhood trauma. Check it out, link in the description below.
Great.
And other than that, there's not really anything to bring up besides this.
Hey.
I am absolutely blown away by the fact it is here. It's physical. I can touch it. I'm touching it. It's so cool, and it's all thanks to you guys. Sure, YouTube was 100,000 late, which is so ironic, but I just love you all so much, and now I can hold it, I can touch it, and this is because of you guys, and the fact that it's here with me.
It is so wholesome.
I
love this. I love Wendigoon.
It means the most. When I started this series that you're watching right now, I was at, I think, 800 subscribers, and look,
get me to 800 subscribers. Come on, so we can be how Wendigoon was before Part 1 of Conspiracy Theory Iceberg.
And I've got double the amount, and it's all thanks to you guys. So I sincerely mean it. Thank you so much.
Nah, Wendigoon deserves so much more than me.
So,
Wendigoon's so great. Sorry, Travis.
Right there. Cool. So let's go ahead and get into the theories to finish out Part 7. But as always, thank you for watching.
No problem, man. No problem. Thank you for watching.
Exactly.
Thank you for making Wendigoon.
The idea that the moon was built by aliens. I kind of mentioned this whenever I talked about the prison
Death Star.
concept. That
yeah, he did.
idea of the moon being artificial kind of ties into it, but this is the more specific version. So for starters, it's an anomaly in itself that the moon exists as it does.
Because it's so big compared to the Earth.
Size, our moon should be about 40 miles long, whereas our moon is more like 2,000. Not only that, but there's structures on the moon that don't make a lot of sense, that have even had the name coined of shadow structures, which are supposedly artificial monoliths and things created on the moon as a sort of beacon or marker. Not only that, but seismic testing on the moon has shown that it takes up approximately 2% of the Earth's volume, which is way less than it should given its size. This implies, again, that the moon might be hollow. Hollow moon theory.
Hollow moon theory!
Back into the ancient aliens concept, the Zulu people had a legend that the moon was a great egg that was brought down to Earth,
an egg
cracked open, which people came out of, and then was set back up in the sky and closed together. And going in line with the ancient aliens theory, if a race came down to Earth and did something similar and then ascended back to the moon, that's where the legend may have came from. Protein QRD 4151 is a theory that there is a specific protein in the human genome that determines everything about the person it inhabits. Supposedly, the protein has had a lot of research that's been done to it, silenced by big science and big pharma. Some theories about this relate to the idea that potentially the protein is the indicator of how much a human can connect to the spiritual realm around them. And there's other theories of it that range from everything to adaptability to race theory. So yeah, 2012 Mayan prophecy shift comes from the idea that the 2012 end of the world from the Mayan calendar
remember.
It's just a misconception.
It's kind of weird that I remember, because I was only 6 years old when that happened, but I still remember that.
In actuality, the Mayan calendar never ended at 2012, as researchers have equated it to just because your calendar ends at December 31st doesn't mean the world ends, it just means you need to get a new calendar, which is the same situation that happened with the Mayans.
Right.
They just built so far into the future, that doesn't mean that they said the end of the world was coming, that just means that's as big of a calendar as they made. And also, given the way our calendars worked, it wouldn't have been 2012 when their calendar ended. It would have been more like 2028. So don't worry.
So we still have some years.
Aeromorphous psyops. So if you don't know what aeromorphous is, I'm not going to be the one to show you.
I don't know what that is. I'm scared.
Rule 34 for animated planes. Anyway, so the theory is that those images were put online in order to sexualize aircraft to encourage the United States people to be more pro-war and encourage
this is the stuff that I click the conspiracy theory iceberg for, okay? This is what I watch Wendigoon for, to understand the true conspiracies the government's hiding from us.
On aircraft.
Yes.
Meaning it's state-sanctioned airplane kit.
Yes.
I love these series so much because the idea that there was like a CIA.
Brazil made, I'm pretty sure the Brazil made state-sanctioned horse porn, so like, I mean, it's not as far-fetched as it originally sounds.
CIA agent sitting inside of the Pentagon, and some general was like, how can we get these kids into bombing Syria? And some dude in a suit's like, I got an idea. Disneyland secret tunnels.
I was imagining George Bush, like, you know how he like paints stuff? He's just like, I got an idea. I gotta get the Americans to understand.
Is in itself not a theory and is an actual system of tunnels that exist beneath Disneyland.
It's true.
Also known as the utilidors, which stands for utility corridors. They were supposedly theorized by Walt Disney himself, who whenever he was in the Tomorrowland section of his park, saw a character walking through in a cowboy costume to get from one job to the other, and said it really took the magic out of it seeing someone in a spot they're not supposed to be. So instead, they built tunnels underneath Disneyland as a means of transportation for workers. These things have expanded to now they are storage, they are security, there's cafeterias, and even a hairdresser shop. If you get a behind-the-scenes tour at Disneyland, you can even see a portion of these tunnels which are color-coded as a means to let people know which attraction they're walking towards. However, the theories come from the fact that these tunnels are about 400,000 square feet, and with many of them not being mapped to public knowledge, and disappearances occurring at Disney, and all the accusations of Disneyland with greater Illuminati conspiracies, you can figure out where they go from there. Because if there's miles worth of secret tunnels underneath a super rich multinational
I thought that was going to cause many suspicions.
Of course, there's going to be theories on it. Abaka alignment is the term used to describe the arrangement of the Egyptian pyramids. There's a lot of belief within the ideas of sacred geometry, or the idea that shapes hold particular meaning, that they were arranged in such this way as a tribute to some sort of god, although it's never specifically said within their religion that we can find. What is interesting is during the initial overlooks of the moon, Russian spaceship Luna 9 and American spaceship Orbiter 2 caught interesting pictures of something on the dark side of the moon. After analyzing these images, they seem to be some of the shadow structures which I talked about earlier. So, supposedly artificial bodies on the moon, and they were arranged in the perfect shape of the pyramids in Egypt, following the Ababa alignment. So did something
aliens
from the
built the
moon
moon?
come to Egypt and
Hello,
have to
moon
build
theory.
pyramids like their thing on the moon? Or did something from the moon see the pyramids and then build them to match? I personally like the second one because the ideas of aliens seeing
that's
our
cool.
pyramids and structures we built and then trying to do them themselves is
That's pretty cool.
kind of cute. Bacterial humanity is the idea that humans themselves exist as a sort of bacteria. The theory sort of works like this. Imagine the Earth as the host, which is a living, breathing organism. We ourselves work as the bacteria or the infection, using the resources of the host in order to sustain ourselves. Naturally, the host produces antibodies as a means to kill the bacteria, which is everything on Earth that kills us. But we, as an infection, continue to grow and repopulate and adapt to such a point we don't have to worry about the host defense mechanisms anymore. So, as
it kind of makes
bacterial
sense.
infections do, it will eventually get to a point in which we kill the host, therefore killing ourselves. So big overall analogy, humans bad, Earth good. Yeah. Ancient glyphs on Saturn's moons is interesting. So Saturn's moons have always been pretty odd in the realm of astronomy. Like, not only are there a ton of them, but they're incredibly diverse in what their surface pertains. Again, this all ties back into ancient aliens, but the most interesting thing about all this to me is there are two moons that have these very odd geographic markings on them that scientists can't really explain, that look like this. And they can't really be explained as old water systems like they can on Mars, because there's not really tributaries and it doesn't look like the way water would flow. And general consensus is that they seem to be giant claw marks. I've got no theory for that, no jokes. That's the most terrifying, cool thing I've ever heard.
That's just a terrifying Lovecraftian concept.
Like a giant space eagle clawed two of Saturn's moons. Oh my gosh, that is some Dead
terrifying.
Space H.P. Lovecraft material, and I for one am here for it. The Charlie Project I had never heard of before researching for this video, but I'm glad I do now. Started by Megan Good in 2004, it is a database of every cold case missing persons file in the United States. Usually existing at more than 14,000. There's nothing that the site can really do to find these missing people, but it is a massive database for missing people in general. What normally happens after someone goes missing is the news and local police kind of stop the search for it, so Megan created this site as a means of maintaining some form of information about them. The cold cases on there date all the way from now to 1910. It exists not only as a database for investigators, as most are exclusive to, but also for any individual to look up and read. I for one went on there and clicked on a few stories of people local to my area, in which it gives their last known location, details about them, and what they were seen doing. And some of them
I might do that
haunting.
on my own time. That's interesting.
About the site because they exist off of donations, and I think it's an important and useful database. So stay tuned for that. But I'm glad I know about the Charlie Project. I think it's something
that seems a really cool thing.
If you're interested. And as a matter of
really
fact, I'll link it below next to the Scrabble video.
Very cool.
Grain situation is another apocalypse theory. The idea being that across the world we've created all of these modified crops in order to feed people on a mass scale. These modified crops are resistant to everything from pesticide, insects, dehydration, natural competition, so on and so forth. So, what would happen if one of these super plants ever decided to become competitive itself? What if a specific grass plant began to kill all the grass plant in its area and grow out and out and out until it eventually dominates not only its ecosystem but ecosystems around it? The idea being it could eventually progress to the point where it kills out several species as it maintains domination, and eventually leads from everything to famines, fires,
only
and
happy
one
thoughts.
Long theory I read, even an ice age due to the mix of carbon emissions that would happen.
Oh,
so
great.
Humans try to make super plant to feed themselves, dust to dust, blah blah blah. Earth is bigger than the sun. Nope. The idea behind this is that the whole sun being bigger is a psyop, and like the governments have coordinated with spacecraft and all of that to just
obviously,
tell us
guys,
that
come
the
on.
sun is bigger. for some reason. And it all goes back to the core belief of the conspiracy theory mantra, which is seeing is believing. So if you didn't see it, it's not real. Asterisk High Command comes from supposed contact people have made with aliens through something called channels. Channels are essentially people who believe that they have been given messages from extraterrestrials, and then they use that information to convey to others in order to proliferate whatever the alien said. George von Tessel is probably the most famous example of this, as in 1953 he said he received messages from a being known as Ashtar and started a movement off of those messages. He began an organization known as the Ministry of Universal Wisdom, who essentially worked as a centralized hub for people who either believed in UFOs or made contact with them. Von Tessel began by reinterpreting the Bible through the eyes of what Ashtar had told him and came to conclusions
sounds like a cult to me.
As Jesus Christ was an ET. Researching this stuff, the lore is expansive. Like, there are stories of these massive star fleets that Ashtar uses, as well as the history of their race of people, and yada yada yada. It goes on for a while, but this is basically a large group come together under this one belief of one alien super race. Ocean doesn't exist.
Don't exist, bro.
The sun being smaller than the earth.
Ocean don't exist, bro.
I wish that would make me sleep a lot easier at night. One theory on this did kind of work as a theory. It's the idea that the ocean actually doesn't have a bottom, and instead there is a gravitational center within the earth that the ocean waters interflow and connect with each other, so technically the ocean is unlimited and underneath every continent. However, most research with this is just saying that it's a psyop, and it's like, well, if you ever went from one side of the ocean to the other and kept track that you weren't flipped around or whatever, so you're just in a really big lake, which I mean technically, yeah, I guess the ocean is a really big lake, but
really big lake, yeah.
And if you did cross the ocean and keep track, well, I guess you're just in on it. It's another one of those I didn't see it, therefore it's not true things. Geometric algorithmic shortcuts is referring to the fact that in geometry there are certain patterns that begin to show up more and more often. For example, if you're trying to diagram how energy will react in a sort of vacuum or environment, it often comes out in a sort of ellipsis shape. There's beliefs that this is the reason the ellipsis is used as the symbol for infinity or the afterlife or what have you. And this theory goes on to say, well, our universe is made to be shaped like a thermodynamic reaction, or the entire solar system itself is made to look like a man, or this all relates back to the ideas of sacred geometry and the idea that our
cool
plane of
concept.
existence around us manifests itself through shapes. Morale de spiral, which close enough, also known as the spiral, references the artist and architect Frederik Hunterwasser, who was known for his idea that straight lines were awful in art, represented no creativity, and you should never use them. This again kind of relates to the idea of sacred geometry, as Hunterwasser kind of viewed the ideas of free-flowing lines as an expression of life itself. However, what's interesting about this, so if you imagine free-flowing lines as they travel roundabout as an expression of life and carelessness, then a spiral would be life inevitably making itself towards one point that it can't escape. Basically, the idea that in his artwork, the spiral was the symbol for death or the inevitable. And as his artwork goes on, you can see spirals being incorporated more and more into his works. The idea that through his artwork, we can see how he began to recognize the inevitability of where he'd end up. So if this idea of free-thinking geometry as a means of representing life is true, then a spiral could be used as a symbol of not only death and the inevitable, but an omen of badness itself. So some people have taken this idea and adapted it to the idea that spirals themselves are bad juju and you shouldn't look at them or have one around you. So again,
then why did you draw a picture on one, Wendigoon?
Last concept of shortcuts,
you fool!
And see that the Milky Way is a spiral galaxy, then what is that supposed to mean? Bioma over genoma is saying that perhaps the biology within your body or the bacteria inside of you are more important than your actual genes. This has actually been theorized for a while. In 2007, the Human Microbiome Project was put together to experiment on this very concept. And while it's not true, the whole myth that there's more bacteria cells in your body than there are human cells in your body, there certainly are a lot. And since bacteria play a huge role in not only fending off disease but performing metabolic processes within the body, then maybe there is some credence to the fact that doesn't necessarily matter how you're born, but more so what you take in afterwards. This would explain the reason that
can be used for a lot of
children
concepts
who are protected from the world around them and aren't allowed to interact with the bacteria develop diseases later in life because they don't have
immunity.
a healthy immune system.
Right.
Not because of tolerance or anything like that, as most people think, but because they just simply need more bacteria as a means of helping their own system. Hive mind induction is a theory behind how we may be now working our way towards a hive mind. The idea being that we are currently laying the groundwork for what will later become a massive conglomerate of thought. This is done through media and other sources around us, trying to push us all towards knowing everything that's currently going on, or in other words, making sure we're all on the same page with the information dump that's given to us daily. Whereas the next step would be a unified thought, which some argue the media is already pushing its way for, and this would all inevitably end to Elon Musk shooting us in the brain with a super chip that connects all of our thoughts together and become one giant planet thing. Sort of similarly related is the idea of field consciousness. So for those that don't know, consciousness is kind of an anomaly in science. While we understand where thoughts come from and ideas, the factor of consciousness itself and the things that make up us as a person are kind of a mystery. Like, for example, there's no space in your brain for memory, or at least none that we can find. So the idea behind field consciousness is like a field in physics.
That's really interesting,
around
actually.
us sort of exists this ethereal anatomy of what our consciousness is that we pull from whenever we need it, and that's where memory and higher order thought come from. This would also give credence to the theory that I mentioned however many tiers back, that humans sort of learn as a collective. So whenever someone learns one capability, the person next to them is more likely to learn it. Or the idea that as soon as someone breaks a record in something, more people begin to break that record rapidly. So not only are your thoughts and memories out there for you to gain access from, but others, even if involuntarily, are able to do the same. This could also be seen as an explanation.
I really like that
for
concept actually.
or unknown memories and deja vu. Chaos banking is a wild concept. I'm going
I actually really like that one.
Explain it. So the theory goes in line with
Chaos
the idea
banking.
that eventually we will get to the point that we run out of physical materials to trade for currency. So we'll quit that, and then we'll move into trading like electricity and energy, and then we'll run out of that, and eventually get to such a point as an existence of whatever being we are at that point in future that we trade temporal anomalies. And the thing that would be traded as a temporal anomaly is chaos, or in other words, anomalies themselves as they exist throughout time. So assuming at that point in the future they've managed to manipulate or go back to time in some way, those beings in the future could be cashing in on the currency that is chaos right now. So think of it this way: you're going about your life normally, and then something out of the usual happens. That creates a bit of temporal chaos. These beings from the future use that chaos as part of their banking system. Now go a step further and say seemingly totally random, supernatural, everything from UFOs to ghosts could just be these things from the future sort of mining our presence in order to create more temporal cash.
Monsters Inc., what I tell you?
Temporal energy can be harnessed for whatever reason.
They're collecting our
slight
screams.
Alterations in the timeline as a means of producing energy or wealth could be utilized. So random things that happen to you aren't actually random. They are just a race of super people eons in the future using it to profit at your expense.
Great.
So there's nothing you can do about it. Doom ecology is accelerationism applied to ecology. The idea is that we are constantly hurting the earth. So what we need to do is rapidly accelerate this hurting of the earth so that
we can start rebuilding,
to kill us off, and then we can worry about the next steps. The core belief in accelerationism, as it's tied to politics, is the idea that we can't make any progress while we're heading downhill, so we might as well jump to the bottom so we can begin to work our way back up. This is that only with nature, so we need to jump to the mass extinction event of humanity, and then we can start to rebuild. So we might as well get it over with while we're here. Kim IRL is in reference to the Kim thing from Elder Scrolls, which is sort of escaping your human body. And this is mostly just a joke or misinformation on here, as I've talked about earlier. However, I did find one Reddit thread in which the person recommended that they should wear dark clothes and grow out all the hair on their face, and that'll do it. So okay. Tomoko Umaya is one of the channels for extraterrestrials, which I talked about earlier, who began writing books in 1994. Supposedly, he has made contact with several extraterrestrial bodies and has written many books about these altercations. There's a lot of expansive stuff he gets into in his work, with most of it being ideas of how aliens have affected us through human history, and the idea that there will be great terraforming events for the aliens to do things, I guess. And he exists as a modern example of a channel. Nuclear grid theory is the concept of ley lines applied to nuclear science. For those that don't know, ley lines is the idea that across the Earth there are these natural magnetic centers that sort of flow as they travel around the globe. A lot of the theories with them say that ancient civilizations purposefully placed their structures and temples on these ley lines, even if they weren't conscious of it, as some sort of greater spiritual vision intended for them to, or because it created more symbiosis or what have you. Supposedly, after the nuclear strikes that occurred at the end of World War II, they opened up a secondary set of ley lines. The idea being that such a massive energy expansion at once caused a sort of second plane of ley lines to be unfolded, or we created enough energy to jump up to this next plane of being. And along this new set of ley lines, supernatural events have taken place. Everything from ghost sightings to UFO sightings to Bigfoot encounters and what have you. Basically, the idea that the reason supernatural occurrences have proliferated so much in the 21st century and into the 20th century is because we sort of opened the door. And that is it for part 3 of...
Alright, so that's it for part 7 of the Conspiracy Iceberg. This is a very long video, and if you sat through this entire video and not even subscribe or like or even comment once, what are you honestly doing, bro? You went through the entire video and you didn't subscribe, like, or comment, bro. What's wrong with you? Anyway, yeah, so if you want to see me react to part 8, it's gonna be coming, so yeah, just wait for that, and yeah, goodbye.